I am your host, Christene Marie, and we will start with our review of preceding lessons before we dive into lesson 72. Lesson 40, I am blessed as the Son of God. Lesson 41, God goes with me wherever I go. Lesson 42, God is my strength, vision is his gift. Lesson 43, God is my source, I cannot see apart from him. Lesson 43 and 44, God is the light in which I see. Lesson 45, God is the mind with which I think. Lesson 46, God is the love in which I forgive. Lesson 47, God is the strength in which I trust. Lesson 48, there is nothing to fear. Lesson 49, God's voice speaks to me all through the day. Lesson 50, I am sustained by the love of God. Lesson 61, I am the light of the world. Lesson 62, forgiveness is my function as the light of the world. Lesson 63, the light of the world brings peace to every mind through my forgiveness. Lesson 64, let me not forget my function. Lesson 65, my only function is the one God gave me. Lesson 66, my happiness and my function are one. Lesson 67, love created me like itself. Lesson 68, love holds no grievances. Lesson 69, my grievances hide the light of the world in me. Lesson 70, my salvation comes from me. Lesson 71, only God's plan for salvation will work. And lesson 72, holding grievances is an attack on God's plan for salvation. Well, we have recognized that the ego's plan for salvation is the opposite of God's. We have not yet emphasized that it is an attack on his plan and a deliberate attempt to destroy it. In the attack, God has assigned the attributes which are actually associated with the ego, while the ego appears to take on the attributes of God. The ego's fundamental wish is to replace God. In fact, the ego is the physical embodiment of that wish, for it is that wish that seems to surround the mind with the body, keeping it separate and alone, and unable to reach other minds except through the body that made it imprison it. The limit on communication cannot be the limit on communication cannot be the best means to expand communication. Yet the ego would have you believe that it is. Although the attempt to keep the limitations that a body would impose is obvious here, it is perhaps not so apparent while holding grievances is an attack on God's plan for salvation. But let us consider the kinds of things you are apt to hold grievances for. Are they not always associated with something a body does? Wow. A person says something you do not like. He does something that displeases you. He betrays his hostile thoughts in his behavior. You are not dealing here with what that person is. On the contrary, you are exclusively concerned with what he does in a body. You are doing more than failing to help him. You are doing more than failing to help in freeing him from body limitations. You are actively trying to hold him to it by confusing it with him and judging them as one. Herein is God attacked. For if his son is only a body, so must he be as well. A creator wholly unlike his creation is inconceivable. If God is a body, what must his plan for salvation be? What could it be but death? In trying to present himself as the author of life and not of death, he is a liar and deceiver, full of false promises and offering illusions in the place of truth. The body's apparent reality makes this view of God quite confusing. In fact, if the body were real, it would be difficult indeed to escape this conclusion. And every grievance that you hold insists that the body is real. It overlooks entirely what your brother is. It reinforces that your belief that he is the body and condemns him for it. And it asserts that his salvation must be death, projecting his attack on God and holding God responsible for it. Wow. To this carefully prepared arena where angry animals seek for prey and mercy cannot enter, the ego comes to save you. God made you a body very well. Let us accept this and be glad. As a body, do not let yourself be deprived of what the body offers. Take the little you can get. God gave you nothing. The body is your only savior. It is the death of God and your salvation. These are from the ego perspectives. This is a universal belief of the world you see. Some hate the body, some try to hurt and humiliate it. Others love the body and try to glorify and exalt it. But while the body stands at the center of your concept of yourself, you are attacking God's plan for salvation and holding your grievances against God and his creation, that you may not hear the voice of truth and welcome it as a friend. Your chosen savior takes God's place instead. It is your friend. God is your enemy. We will try today to stop these senseless attacks on salvation. We will try to welcome it instead. Your upside down perception has been ruinous to your peace of mind. You have seen yourself in a body and the truth outside you, locked away from your awareness and the body's limitations. Now we are going to try to see this differently. The light of truth is in us. That is where it was placed by God. It is the body that is outside of us and not our concern. To be without a body is to be in our natural state. To recognize the light of truth is in us is to recognize ourselves as we are. To see ourselves as separate from the body is to end the attack on God's plan for salvation and to accept it instead. And wherever his plan is accepted, it is accomplished already. Our goal in the longer practice periods today is to become aware that God's plan for salvation has already been accomplished in us. To achieve this goal, we must replace attack thoughts with acceptance. As long as we attack it, we cannot understand what God's plan for us is. We are therefore attacking what we do not recognize. Now we are going to try to lay judgment aside and ask what God's plan for us is. What is salvation, Father? I do not know. Tell me that I may understand. Then we will wait in quiet for his answer. We have attacked God's plan for salvation without waiting to hear what it is. We have shouted our grievances so loudly that we have not stopped to listen to his voice. We have used our grievances to close our eyes and stop our ears. Now we would see and hear and learn. What is salvation, Father? Ask and you will be answered. Seek and you will find. We are no longer asking the ego what salvation is and where to find it. We are asking it of truth. Be certain then that the answer will be true because of whom you ask. Whenever you feel your confidence wane and your hope of success flicker and go out, repeat your question and your request, remembering that you are asking of the infinite creator of infinity, who created you like himself. What is salvation, Father? I do not know. Tell me that I may understand. He will answer. Be determined to hear. 1 or perhaps 2 shorter practice periods an hour will be enough for today, since they will be somewhat longer than usual. These exercises should begin with this. Holding grievances is an attack on God's plan for salvation. Let me accept it instead. What is salvation, Father? Then wait a minute or 2 in silence, preferably with your eyes closed, and listen to his answer. Wow, y'all. There is so much from this lesson today that just got me. I'm going back up to the top because there were honestly what she does that I really, really appreciate. It's very logical. Like she uses very logical reasoning, which I absolutely love. When I was in 7th grade, we did a couple logic courses in my school. And frankly, there's something around logic that can be preventative to creativity because it's so cognitively based and it's really using up the left hemisphere of the brain, whereas creativity is so much in the right. But even still, I get a kick out of the left brain cultivation with the spiritual concepts. You know, it's so easy to overemphasize the cultivation of the right brain when it comes to spirituality and like being creative and sensing God's voice and all of that. It can kind of take you a bit more ethereal, but what she's talking about is very grounded in logical reasoning. If this, then that, which I really, really appreciate. And effectively, one of the things that stood out to me while we were reading this is a reminder. We've been talking about identity over the last couple of weeks, and we've been talking about identity as the amalgamation of 2 parts. The first part, who does God say that I am? And this universal truth applies to every single person. We are loved. we are cherished, we are worthy, we are accepted. There's nothing we can do that would separate us from the love of God. All of these points are actually applicable to every single person. And then identity B, which, is the second part, is effectively the uniqueness of you and me. He made you very, very differently than he made me. And when you add in our unique experiences and our unique stories, now we're even more differentiated, yet always joined by identity A. So that's where, when we're talking about feeling separate, when we're talking about feeling alone or feeling isolated, we're probably forgetting identity A. We're forgetting kind of that universal bond that all of us share, which is through and by the identity and the love of God that he has for each one of us. And so whenever we are feeling alone, we're forgetting identity A. And when we're attacking other people, we're forgetting identity A, because this is where, going back to like the very, very early lessons, when we're attacking somebody else, we're really attacking ourselves, because we're attacking their identity. When we're saying you suck, when we're saying you are terrible, when we're accusing people of all these things, we're attacking at their core who they are. But we're also, in so doing, we're also attacking our core identity by saying you're not lovable, you're not worthy. Well, we're effectively saying that about us too, because we share in that identity. So that's why grievances are so much about attacking ourselves, and forgiveness is also about ourselves too. It releases us. It reminds us of who we are. It frees us from them. That does not mean we do not still exhibit justice. Somebody brought that up in our conversation last night. Forgiveness is not void of justice by any means. Forgiveness is the internal. And we talk about unconditional love. That is the inner posture. It is operating from an internal core center place. It doesn't, in one sense, it actually doesn't have too much to do with our actions, other than being the powering source. That's the fuel in the tank, rather than hate being the fuel in the tank or bitterness being the fuel in the tank. Imagine that every single day, like a car, you've got a full tank of gas by which you then are powered to live your day. And so then the question is, okay, what's the source of the fuel? Where are we sourced up? Where's our gas station? And then also, what type of fuel are we putting in? So who's my source and what's being put in? Is my source God, and is love the fuel? That's really, really simple. A lot of people will try to have love be the fuel, but they don't have a strong, stable source. And so it's a question of both source and fuel that we need to kind of take into consideration. And then while we're talking about this aspect, so that's kind of part number one. When we're attacking somebody else, we're attacking our own identity effectively, because we're calling into question their own worthiness, and thus ours, because that's identity A that is universal and shared. And then the second part of that she brings up that I thought was so interesting, and I've never thought of it this way. So I'm so grateful. She blew my mind this morning. Okay. The ego's fundamental wish is to replace God. In fact, the ego is the physical embodiment of that wish, for it is that wish that seems to surround the mind with a body, keeping it separate and alone, unable to reach other minds except through the body that made it to imprison it. The limit on communication cannot be the best means to expand communication, yet the ego would have you believe that it is. Although the attempt to keep the limitations that a body would impose is obvious here, it is perhaps not so apparent why holding grievances is an attack on God's plan for salvation. Let us consider the kinds of things you are apt to hold grievances for. Are they not always associated with something a body does? A person says something you don't like. He does something that displeases you. It's his behavior. You are not dealing here with what that person is. On the contrary, you are exclusively concerned with what he does in a body. Y'all, this is wild. And then here's the thing: when we're attacking that person and calling them out for who they are, but really it's something that their body did, this is where it's like, this is above my pay grade. And it's so cool to try to like really, really work through this with you guys, because all of us are learning. For those of you, unless those of you have gone through this book already, I went through it last year, but to really sit and talk about it with you is just it's so exciting, because it really kind of forces me to really learn the material. So thank you all for hanging out with me this morning. When we are attacking someone and assigning who they are as their body, we're almost immediately forming a wall here. So at first blush, we're attacking their core identity A, but we are actually attacking what they do, and their physical body is not them. So in this, we're actually corrupting our identity 2 times over. We're corrupting it by way of us saying that you're not lovable, but then we're also corrupting it for a second time by way of assigning what somebody does is who they are. And y'all, this is why our identity has been so skewed and so confused over so many years, because we're assigning our value to what we do. And so we're not able to see our worthiness as inherent and as pre-assigned and predestined and chosen by God as, no, you're lovable and you're worthy no matter what. It's who you are. And so who we are has actually been fundamentally assigned to our actions. Now, our actions are going to be so often a reflection of what we're cultivating. So if we have identity A actually completely kind of shut off and silenced because we are not having access to God, we're not feeding and nurturing that part of us, it's going to kind of be silent. It's going to lie dormant. And then there's going to be things coming out of us that are probably from the ego, because ego wants to take that place of the identity. It's like either we're feeding, again, the gas is from both the fuel source, but then also what type of fuel itself. So if we're actually hooking up that part of our identity to what ego says about us, ego might actually be our gas station. And then the fuel could be shame. It could be anger. It could be bitterness. It could be resentment. It could be anything we're holding towards other people, because ultimately we're kind of going to the ego gas station rather than the God gas station. And so whoever is the key source in our life, that's going to overflow into our actions. You shall know a tree by its fruit. So what is the fruit in your life? And what's the fruit in somebody else's life? That does not mean that is who they are. And here's what's even more, I guess, it raises the stakes. Let's say that whenever we're assigning who somebody is to what they do, we're conforming and like belittling God to a body, because God is so high and so big and so beautifully grandiose in so many ways. And so then if we're like, you are what you do, then we're confining God to a body, because the creation is made like the creator. And so if the creator made us and we are just reduced to what the physical body is, not a spirit, not a soul, man, we're actually reducing God. So there's kind of 3 dangers here with grievances and holding that against people. Is that, one, we are fundamentally attacking ourselves, because we're attacking that core identity of your love. Are you loved? Are you worthy? Are you accepted? Are you chosen? Are we actually unconditionally loved regardless of what we do? So we're attacking our own identity because we're attacking that part in them that is universal. And then second, we're confusing the whole thing and now attributing worth and value and who somebody is to their action and what they do. And then third, we end up reducing God to that same point. So grievances, there's really high stakes with grievances beyond just, me being free to be in the present, me being free to move into the future. It has much deeper ramifications. So this is speaking so highly to the cause and the danger of grievances. And lesson 72 says, holding grievances is an attack on God's plan for salvation. So what a powerful lesson. And I'm very, very curious to hear y'all's thoughts on this. Mark says, my identity is husband and Christian. And even in that, Mark, it's so interesting. Like, as you say that, I just had a thought. My sister, her identity was wife, and then her husband was killed by a drunk driver. And so are you now no longer as worthy? Are you now no longer as loved because you don't have this, like, who are you now? When your identity was as I love asking people, who are you? And so much of their identity is incredible things: father, husband, son, pastor, like these amazing titles. But what happens if something's stripped away? What happens if you lose your child? What happens if you lose your spouse? What happens if you do have divorce? If your identity is wrapped up in any one of these roles, what happens if your church implodes? There's a lot of that happening. So what happens? Are you now no longer worthy? Are you now no longer, because if your identity is in what you do, it's just, there's an instability there. And I also think it's the most wonderful thing to have so much regard. I think we need more people proud to be a husband and more people proud to be a father. But when our core identity is tied up in that, that's where it does get a little bit dangerous. Vindoc says, at first I was blind and now I see. Bilal from Nigeria, good to see you. Just scrolling through some of these. Micro, I'm going to go ahead and put you on timeout. We just don't talk like that here. Dilbert, hello. All right. Brandon, good morning. How to heal the mind. Venum, wow. How to heal the mind. What a beautiful way, like what a beautiful question. I'm actually going to get to that. If you're, Venom, let me know that you're still here. And then we're going to get to that question, because what I might actually do is make that a show in and of itself, because that's a really, really, really important question. And it warrants a conversation. All right, just looking. All right. There's a lot happening here. Benjamin, good to see you. Matthew, good morning. This guy, NFR. He says, we are all unworthy, only Jesus is worthy. Man, I think that God looks at us with so much love. I really, really, really do. Especially, if we're going to take that logical flow, like we were talking about earlier, if the story of Jesus is true, if he came to save, if, then we are completely redeemed. God views us as he views Jesus. No, actually, we're entirely worthy. And it's just a matter of acting and living accordingly. Am I going to actually stand up and walk in the fullness of my identity? Philly Savage says, people get upset with truth. Isn't that so true? Nawah, hello. Sam Moala, good morning. Jeff, good morning. Thank you. God bless you. Crunchy, I love this. Ego, staying down to earth and being real and sincere with others, sorts having a big ego. I love that, being sincere. That's a word, that isn't used often these days. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's so good. Philly, I think I already said good morning, but good morning. Just scrolling down in the chat. Mike Londos, good morning. Zen Abach, thank you. Thanks for joining. Jello, good morning. Michael, my ex blocked me, and we have an established parenting plan. She won't answer the phone or door. Do you have any advice? What should I do? Michael, let me know if you're still here. Just like I was saying to Venom, if both of you guys are still here, we'll talk about those. Yeah, don't take me seriously, says. Oh gosh. Oh, and then Michael says, like, okay, yeah. Michael, you're here. Okay, good. Well, obviously, I mean, I think that without the context, it's so hard to ask or answer that. What's interesting? I tell my darling and I both have a really kind of core belief around something. And it's the concept, it's a narrative, effectively, that when things go wrong, it's like, okay, we're going to believe this and remind ourselves of this. It's the phrase, this is for me, that somehow there's going to be good in this. And so kind of actually changing that perception to replace the fear or the anxiety or the anger, whatever is kind of currently in its stead. Once then I can actually replace that narrative with this is for me. Immediately there's a sense of peace and there's a sense of calm. And usually with it comes a clarity of mind to be able to be like, oh, like what actually is the best thing to do here? Because if we're angry, we're actually not able to think as clearly. We're not actually able to really come up with a real plan of what should I do. So there's something of when we are, I can only imagine that this experience is really upsetting. Like rightfully so. If you've got a formalized court ordered parenting plan and it's not being honored, that's a big deal, right? It's actually illegal. And so before getting to the point of taking action that could be, again, it's like, okay, where's your gas station? What's your fuel? If your fuel is even anxiety, if your fuel is anger or resentment or kind of like, let me get back at you, it's almost like that there's nothing good that can come of that because you're actually not the one in the driver's seat. Ego is, or fear is, there's something else that's kind of controlling you in that moment. So what I mean, gosh, this is where I would encourage you if you haven't done this yet is to really actually take some time and really kind of get to a place where you're okay and you're not driven by either one of the, or any of those emotions, but you're actually able to kind of be coming from a real stable place. And if you guys have had a relationship where it's like anger, 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 and it kind of like it builds emotionally and it escalates quickly, that's probably what she's going to be expecting from you. And so, okay, let's go ahead and create a new narrative. And it's going to take time if this is somebody you want to be. So I think that this is actually maybe even a question. Who do you want to be? What kind of I think it's, is she your actual current wife? My ex blocked me. Yeah. So what kind of ex-husband, ex-boyfriend do you want to be? And that's really, really important because there was one time, even with my darling, where I've defined who I want to be. And and there was one time when we were walking out of the house and we had just had an argument and I grabbed his hand and he kind of looked at me. He was like, and he just looked at me and I was like, I don't want to do this, but this is who I want to be. And that moment, I think it's kind of softened both of us because it was physical touch, but also it reminded me this brief moment in time is not going to define, it doesn't have power over me to define who I am. I get to choose and I get the power of choice. So between stimulus and response is choice. That is the greatest of all human freedom. We cannot control what other people do. We cannot control the stimulus, but we have all of the power in the world about how we react. And maybe there is opportunity for radical responsibility here to use this opportunity as a mirror. How can you grow? How can you be better? How can you be more reliable and more stable? There's and this is not at all, I have no idea what she did. No idea what she did. But man, I think that there's a really cool opportunity for you to be a representative of God. And yeah, man, the mother of your daughter. Man, that's so, 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 so hard. And this is, I just believe if we could, um, Larry, I'm putting you on timeout. If we could really allow for ourselves to use these moments to remind ourselves this is for me. I'm going to adhere to my own standard, my own high standards for myself. I'm going to do the work to heal. She cheated on you, man. It's every you have all the reasons in the world, right? And so what would it look like for you to act in accordance with who you want to be? And how would it look like for you to, Philly says I check myself a lot, like how would your ideal behave in this situation? But I got to tell you, Michael, if we're not hooked up, if our gasoline isn't the right type of fuel in the tank, it's going to be so hard for us to act in alignment. So for me, my morning practice is, oh man, you walked in on her. Michael, I can only imagine how much pain that must have caused you. I'm so, so, so sorry. I don't know. Have you grieved that? Like, have you actually processed that? And wow, that's so, so, so painful. So Matthew, I'm curious, how do you want to move forward? What does it look like for you, or Michael, I'm sorry, how does it look like for you to walk in alignment with who you want to be, to walk in alignment with the man that God says you are, your identity? Do you know who you are? You know? Do you know who you are, and have you done the work to heal and all of that? Because at the end of the day, that's I think our number one responsibility before we ever interact externally with anybody else. It's we got to go inward and do the work. Am I able to really, really come from a place that I'm proud of because I've done the work to heal? Wow, Matthew is my twin's name. I love that. Mm. And I love this. Philly Savage just reminded me, really being able to pray, you know. Um, and Roy Val says religion is idiotic. It's not about religion, it's about relationship. It really, really, really is. It's about knowing who God created you to be. It's about knowing God. What does He say that's more true? Um, mm. Oh, your identical twin. I love that. Space Time Adventurer. Good morning, Jimmy. Thank you so much for joining. I love that. Michael, I would love if I think tonight I have a guest, but tonight at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, we'll be jumping back on here and having another show. And so if you want to join, it's so funny. I think that this might even be kind of a topic for tonight, perhaps. But Michael, you're saying, what do I do? I really, man, this is again, this is my advice for me. I would really, really actually go inward rather than going outward ready for a fight. I would go inward and there's a couple questions that I've realized that have really helped me. There's three actually in this particular case. Where and like what is this actually? How do I want to say this? What does this moment in your life stem from for you in the past? I know that obviously in childhood, it's not like maybe you had that happen as a kid, but usually what happens in the present is a reflection of literally like repeated wounds in our lives that we need to heal from. And it's almost like in adulthood, they get worse and worse and worse. So my former husband, the dynamic that I had with him actually kind of mirrored what my dynamic was as a child. I never really believed that I was lovable. And then when I entered a marriage where he didn't love me, it's like, well, that makes sense. So I would be really, really curious if you were willing to do this, to actually take time to journal and write down, how does this today, how does it make me feel? Like, how am I doing? How do I actually feel about this? And it might even require real grief, because what ends up happening is that whatever is stuck inside of us ends up staying and ends up corroding and corrupting within us. So for anyone who's holding on to grievances, again, it corrodes and corrupts us rather than allowing ourselves to move through the emotions associated with that experience. And so moving through the emotions, moving through it is one of the most important things, because then, Michael, if you need to actually take her to court, you've actually done the work to be coming from an emotionally stable place. You're not unhinged emotionally. That's one of the worst things that can happen. And so us being able to come from an emotionally stable place because we've moved through the emotion, we've grieved it as necessary, and then being able to come forward and offer up the truth, remind other people of, hey, here's literally the contract, or here's our parenting agreement. And then being able to go from there, I think, is one of the most important things. You doing the work first to say, how am I doing right now? Write it out. Does this have any roots in the past? Were there moments and experiences in the past where I actually felt similar, or somebody else made me really feel this way? And then being able to kind of take the truth. And maybe it's getting a lawyer on your end and going to her. But I also wonder, it kind of depends on obviously what y'all's relationship is like, if you have any access to her, what even happened in the first place. But anyways, yeah, I hope that that's helpful. Y'all, this conversation, holding grievances, is an attack on God's plan. I'm going to be taking this with me today because it's so incredibly important. But thank you all so much for joining today. I'll be live again tonight, 8:15 or 8:30 p.m. Eastern. We've got a pretty cool guest coming on, actually. His name is Benjamin, and he's a U.S. Marine, and he's got some really interesting perspectives to share with us. So excited about that. Matthew, sometimes we do highlight certain questions that are being posted in the chat. And so Roy, you are more than welcome to go elsewhere, my friend. But yeah, feel free, guys. We did spend some time talking to Michael this morning. I'd love questions from you guys in the future. It's really interesting. It's really interesting when we're able to really come alongside each other. That's the goal, is to be in a community. And y'all, we are going to have some kind of rules implemented here so that we can have this conversation in this place, be a space where people can offer up and share. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about somebody whose girlfriend committed suicide, and we spent some time just like loving on that person and listening and talking. And so that's so much of the goal of why we're here in the first place, is to encourage each other and remind ourselves of what's true and come alongside. It's so lonely, it's so lonely sometimes. And so we really get to love each other and support each other. So I love that. Ian says, we got to help Michael. I love it. So that's the goal. That's the type of community that I'd love to have with you all, is one where we're growing together. We're helping and supporting each other. We're also challenging each other. Like if there's the same person coming in, we're giving the same type of encouragement and they're not changing or doing anything. It's like, hey, all right, well, you're clearly not willing to do the work. So we're going to, there's not that there's a consequence, but wisdom would say, keep moving forward, So anyways, y'all, thank you so much for joining this morning. I hope you have a wonderful day.